where do we lay the blame? On the government, teaching, even on parents? Meet the chairman of the National Confederation of Parent-Teacher Associations, Margaret Morrissey, and Baroness Blackstone, principal of Birkbeck College. Margaret, if I talk to you first, we were talking a little bit about the parents. What do parents make of all this? I know I'm confused.
Well, yes, exactly. Parents are very concerned, but they're equally confused. They listen to Klaus Moser, who tells them that standards are dropping, that we have the worst education system in the world, we must do something about it. A few weeks later, we hear the examining boards telling us that they've got the best results they've ever had, and everything in the garden is rosy. So where does that leave parents? Who do they believe, and which one is right?
What's the biggest worry?
I think the greatest concern has got to be funding. We are always told by the schools, by the local authorities, they just do not have the money to give us what we deserve. And so I think the real question has got to be to the Minister, please give us more funding, because at the end of the day that is the most important thing.
Well, we'll be talking to the Minister on Wednesday, and he'll have a few obviously hard questions to answer. We'll make it a satisfactory reply from him. I was going to ask you, Baroness, if you think talking there, that academic standards are falling. Certainly, in at least one of the panelists' opinions, they have fallen, and fallen badly since the 70s even.
The real answer is that we don't know. We don't have the wherewithal in terms of research and proper monitoring to know whether standards are falling over time. One of the great regrets I have is that the government abolished something called the Assessment of Performance Unit, which was set up in the mid-1970s in the Department of Education with the very job of trying to find out whether standards were going up or down in a variety of different subjects. I think really we do need something like that again, or something like a General Standards Council to try to evaluate the system and to see where we're falling down and to see where we're succeeding.
Yes, well, listening there, it seemed that teachers feel aggrieved, first of all, about their status, about their pay, but mainly it seems about the volume of work that the new system requires from them. The endless paperwork is taking them away from the teaching.
I don't know that it's endless paperwork so much as very big additional burdens with respect to the national curriculum, which is making demands on teachers' time without perhaps enough being invested in training and preparation for this. Very big new demands are going to be made with respect to assessing pupils. There's almost too much change going on in a context where the morale of teachers is already low as a result of poor pay, as a result of declining standards as far as buildings are concerned. There is a £3 billion backlog of repairs to our school buildings. I don't want to see children and young people being educated in slum conditions, and teachers certainly don't want to work in those sort of conditions. So there is a very big resource problem.
We don't want to get to the situation that one reads about all the time of inner city America, with respect to our American guests, where children end up wearing bulletproof vests and all the schools are falling apart. Do you think this is what will happen? Put aside the violence question.
Well, I don't want to be unduly scaremongering, and I think we're quite a long way from the very worst conditions in American inner city schools. But I do think it's exceedingly important that we treat as a matter of the utmost urgency the problems of teacher shortages in our big cities. The DES's own surveys demonstrate that we are now short of qualified teachers in a number of crucial areas, particularly in science and mathematics, in modern languages. These are all parts of the central secondary school curriculum. We're also now short of primary school teachers in some of our inner city areas. And yet, teachers who've made redundant, like the one we've just seen on the programme, cannot afford to move to places like London because of the cost of housing. We have got to come up with schemes that make it possible for teachers to be more mobile between different parts of the country. But above all, we've got to keep teachers in the profession. Only 1/3 of those who start a teacher training course are still working as teachers 5 years later. That's a stunning statistic.
What about the funding, to return to the funding of parent-teachers associations? That schools now, rely far more, don't they, on what can be raised at the school state?
Yes, we have something like 8,000 member schools, and I have a common denominator through all of those schools every single day of every week of term and through the whole of August, which is quite unusual for it to continue. I have schools telephoning to the office and saying, what do we do? We're being asked to give all of the funds we are raising to the school budget. We've come under local management, some of them have, some of them haven't. We need to give all our money to keep the school going. Now this puts parents in a terrible moral dilemma. What do? They raise money through an organisation under a constitution that says the money is for special extra things. But now they're being asked by the school, because they're desperate, to give them the money for textbooks, for everyday things. Now if they don't give the money, their children are going to suffer. They're depriving their children of the education they desperately want them to have. If they do give them the money, they're letting, in so many words, the local authority off the hook. And this is really worrying parents desperately, because they don't want to deprive their children, but yet they know that if they give in, perhaps the funding won't come from anywhere else. So what do they do?
And these are the concerned parents. Probably we haven't got the time to go into whether there are enough people here in this country who want education to be better. If there were, surely the government would have to do something. There's not enough.
Can I come in there? I think that most people do want education to be better. There was a survey that was in fact quoted by Sir Klaus Moser in his recent speech to the British Association, which showed that 75% of those questioned wanted more money to be spent on education. I think people are willing to be taxed a little bit more in order to ensure that our children get the education they deserve. Education is a national need. It's not something that parents should be scraping and saving and providing for out of their own pockets. It should come through the taxpayer and properly be distributed through the system in that way. It is also a fact that the proportion of our gross national product that is spent on education has gone down in the last 10 years from 5.7% to 4.9%, and that's a lot lower than many other comparable countries.
It's a lot lower than most European countries.
It is. I think this is the problem, though, that we're now coming into. We continually argue politics, and at the end of the day, we don't get the answer, not from anyone, and parents are a small voice. We're getting bigger. But, you know, we're saying, get on with it. Don't one party say, we want to do this, and then they don't do it, and another party say, we want to do this, and they don't do it. Because we know we didn't get it from the last government, we're not getting it from this, and we probably won't get it from the next. So really, it's got to be a conscious decision as a whole nation that, you know, this is the most important thing. Whatever there is, whatever industry we have, be it the health service, be it an engineering industry, we have got to be educated, and if we're not educating our children to the standard that's required in the world, then we are not going to be the world leaders anymore, and it's important that we do it, and so we have got to have this from national government.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Baron. And thanks to my other guests. I hope you found that stimulating. I certainly did. And on Wednesday, the Education Secretary, John McGregor, will be here to answer some of the questions and respond, I hope, in a very positive way. So join us on Wednesday at 7 o'clock. Thank you.